They said a poor boy from Brazil would never shine. I can still hear their laughter echoing in the alleys where I played barefoot, with nothing but a ball made of rags at my feet. To them, I was just another hungry child chasing dreams too big for my world. But what they didn't know was that every kick, every bruise, every tear was shaping something they could not control. They believed my story would end in the dust. Instead, the world would one day bow to the name they tried to bury. I was just a boy from the dusty streets of Brazil. No shoes, no money, no reason for anyone to believe I could be more than a forgotten face in the crowd. People looked at me and saw limits. They saw poverty. They saw failure before I even had the chance to try. And maybe you felt that too, being judged not for your heart but for your circumstances, being told that your dreams are too big for someone like you. This story is not just about football. It's about what happens when the world underestimates you, when you're dismissed before you even step onto the field of life. It's about rejection becoming fuel, pain becoming power, and silence turning into the loudest roar the world has ever heard. Because here's the truth. Greatness doesn't come from where you start. It comes from how far you're willing to go when everyone else has already written your ending. My journey, what began as a poor boy with a ball made of rags, would teach me that the crown of the game, the respect of nations, and the reverence of millions are not given. They are earned in blood, sweat, and tears. And in this video, you'll see it all unfold. You'll walk with me through rejection, through the shadows of doubt, through the moments when even I thought the dream was slipping away. You'll see how karma has a way of turning laughter into applause, how the same voices that mocked me would one day chant my name. This isn't just my story. It's a lesson for anyone who has ever been told they don't belong. So stay with me until the end, because this is more than a story about football. It's a story about life, about resilience, about proving that even the smallest flame can outshine the darkest night. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to Beyond the Game, hit the like button, and share this journey with someone who needs it today. And in the comments, tell me, where are you watching from? Drop your city and your country. I want to see how far this story of a poor boy from Brazil can reach. Because maybe, just maybe, this story will remind you of your own. I still remember the taste of dust in my mouth, the kind that never left no matter how many times I wiped my lips. My world was made of narrow alleys and broken streets where barefoot children chased dreams that no one else believed in. I was one of those children, skinny, hungry, too poor to own a proper ball. So we made our own. Rags, socks, whatever scraps we could find. We tied them together into something round enough to chase. That ball was my treasure, my escape, my reason to forget the empty stomach that growled louder than the street vendors calling out their goods. Every step hurt. The stones on the ground cut into my feet, leaving them raw, but I never stopped. I told myself pain was temporary, but the game, this game, was forever. Neighbors shook their heads when they saw me play, as if to say, "What's the point? He'll never be anything more than a poor kid wasting his time." Maybe they were right. At least that's what the world wanted me to believe. My father tried to remind me of reality. He was once a footballer too, but his dream ended before it could begin. Injuries and poverty stole his chance. Sometimes he'd sit quietly, staring at his hands and whisper, "Don't be like me, son. Life won't give you mercy." My mother, worried about money, begged me to think of something more practical. But how could I explain that the ball was the only place I felt alive? Day after day, I played until the sun went down, chasing that ball of rags as if the world depended on it. My friends laughed at me when I practiced moves alone, spinning, dribbling against walls. "You're crazy," they said. "No one is watching, no one cares." But deep inside, I cared. I believed that one day someone would care. Still, there were moments when doubt suffocated me. When my stomach ached from hunger and my body felt too weak to keep going, I wondered if they were right. Maybe I was nothing. Maybe I was wasting my time. But then something inside me would whisper, "Not yet. Keep going. Just one more kick." And so I did. The dusty streets became my training ground. Every uneven stone, every broken corner taught me balance and control. Where others saw only chaos, I found rhythm. My legs grew stronger, my instincts sharper. I wasn't just playing anymore, I was surviving. I started to see football differently. It wasn't just a game, it was my way out, my way forward. It was proof that I was more than the dust that clung to my skin and the hunger that haunted my nights. But the world didn't see that. To them, I was just another poor boy wasting daylight. No one clapped when I scored into makeshift goals. No one noticed when I beat the older boys with nothing but speed and stubbornness. And yet, I noticed. I knew something was building inside me even if the world didn't care. The days blurred into nights and I kept playing. And with every game I asked myself the same question: will anyone ever see me? Because all I had was a dream, and dreams don't pay for food. Dreams don't stop the whispers in the street. Dreams don't erase the truth. The world doesn't bow to poor boys. At least, not yet. Dreams were dangerous where I came from. They were like sparks in the wind, bright for a second, then gone, swallowed by the darkness. My dream was football, and to everyone else, it was a fire I had no right to light. A poor boy with no shoes, no money, no future. What business did I have daring to dream of greatness? The older I grew, the heavier the whispers became. He'll end up just like his father, neighbors muttered as I ran through the alleys, my ragged ball bouncing ahead of me. Another wasted life. Some didn't even bother with whispers. They spoke it to my face. Stop wasting your time, boy. Find a real job. You'll never make it. Their words cut deeper than the stones that pierced my feet. They thought they were protecting me from disappointment. In truth, they were trying to bury my dream before it even had a chance to breathe. At night, I would lie on the thin mattress in our small house, listening to the rats scratching in the walls. My stomach often ached with hunger, but my mind was somewhere else entirely. In my imagination, I stood under dazzling stadium lights, dressed in a uniform that wasn't patched or torn. I could almost hear a crowd chanting my name, the rhythm of thousands of voices lifting me higher than hunger or poverty ever could. That fantasy kept me alive, but it wasn't just about me. My father's story haunted every step I took. He had been talented, maybe even brilliant. People said his dribbling could slice defenses apart, but injury and hardship ended his dream before it began. Sometimes when he thought I wasn't watching, I caught him staring at his old boots worn down and cracked, as if they carried ghosts of matches that never happened. One night, he told me quietly, "Don't be like me, son. Football is a cruel friend. It will love you one day and abandon you the next." My mother's voice was sharper. She worked too hard to tolerate illusions. "You think football will feed us?" She snapped once as she scrubbed clothes in a metal basin. "Dreams don't put rice on the table, better find something useful." Her words stung because I knew she was right. But usefulness without passion felt like death. I couldn't stop. I wouldn't stop. Every insult, every rejection only fueled me. I practiced longer than anyone. My friends played until they were tired. I played until I could no longer stand. They played for fun. I played because the game was the only lifeline I had. Still, the rejections kept piling up. When I tried to join older boys, they shoved me aside. "Too small, too weak, go home." Their laughter burned like fire in my chest. Coaches barely looked at me. To them, I was invisible, a body too fragile, a boy too poor to matter. Yet I kept returning. I dribbled against walls until my legs ached. I practiced tricks no one taught me, moves I invented to survive the chaos of broken streets. I played in the rain, in the burning sun, in fields that weren't fields at all but empty lots filled with stones and glass. The dirt beneath my feet became my first stadium, the shadows my first crowd. One afternoon I finally caught the eye of a local coach. He watched me for a while and my heart nearly exploded with hope. Maybe this was it, the moment someone finally believed in me. After the game, he pulled me aside. My chest swelled. But instead of encouragement, his words were a hammer. "Kid," he said, shaking his head, "quit while you can. You'll never be good enough. Don't waste your life chasing smoke." I forced a smile. but his words tore me apart. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat outside beneath a sky full of stars that felt 1,000,000 miles away. Clutching my ragged ball, I made myself a promise. I swore that one day, those same people who told me to quit would regret their words. I swore that one day, the dream they ridiculed would become the reality they couldn't deny. Dreams too big for a poor kid? Maybe. But dreams were all I had. And sometimes dreams are the only thing strong enough to change the world. Hunger lived with me like a shadow. It followed me from the moment I opened my eyes in the morning until I collapsed at night. Not just the hunger in my stomach, the hollow ache that never truly went away, but a deeper hunger, one that clawed at my soul. It whispered to me in every empty plate, in every torn shoe, in every look of pity that strangers gave my family. It told me I had to fight. It told me I had to keep going. Some boys played football because it was fun. I played because it was survival. When I ran across dusty fields, I wasn't just chasing a ball. I was chasing a future. Every sprint, every kick, every drop of sweat felt like a small rebellion against the life I was born into. Poverty wanted me silent, forgotten. But with every match, every moment on the field, I shouted back, I am still here. The hunger inside me demanded more. If I was too poor for real shoes, then my bare feet would become stronger than leather. If I had no proper field, then the alleys would sharpen my instincts. If no one would teach me, then I would teach myself. I studied older boys, memorized every move, and then created my own. I learned to control a ball on broken ground where every stone was an enemy. I trained until the soles of my feet bled, until my legs trembled, until even my breath felt like fire. Sometimes my friends would stop to rest, laughing as they lay on the ground. "Come on, enough," they shouted. But I couldn't stop. Something inside me wouldn't allow it. I kept running, kept striking, kept pushing until the world around me blurred into nothing but the ball at my feet. To them, it was obsession. To me, it was oxygen. And yet, the world outside football kept trying to crush me. I remember walking through the marketplace with my mother, her hands rough from endless labor. Vendors ignored us, their eyes sliding over her patched clothes and my skinny frame. We were invisible until someone wanted to remind us of our place. "Dreams are for the rich," one man muttered when he saw me juggling my ragged ball in the street. My mother scolded me, embarrassed. But I didn't stop. His words burned into my chest, and I used that fire the next time I played. Even at home, football was a constant battle. My father warned me not to expect too much. My mother begged me to focus on school, but nothing they said could silence the hunger inside me. It was louder than their fears, louder than my doubts. When I kicked that ball, I wasn't poor, I wasn't invisible, I was unstoppable. One evening, after hours of playing until the sun sank low, I sat alone on the field. My feet were blistered, my throat dry, but my mind was alive. I thought about what life could be if I truly broke through. Not just for me, but for my family, for everyone who had ever been told no. The hunger whispered that it was possible. The hunger promised that all this pain was leading somewhere, and deep down, I believed it. Still, belief was fragile. I remember the sting of laughter when I tried to join older boys in a proper match. They shoved me aside, calling me too weak, too skinny, too poor. Their words echoed as I walked home, my head low, my ball of rags under my arm. For a moment, I thought maybe they were right. Maybe this hunger was nothing but madness. But that night, lying in the dark, I closed my eyes and saw the image again. A stadium full of lights, my name on every lip, a ball at my feet. The hunger roared back, louder than ever, and I knew I couldn't give up. Not now, not ever. Because hunger has two choices. It can break you, or it can make you unstoppable. The first time I felt real mockery burn against my skin, I was still just a boy with dust on my legs and fire in my heart. It wasn't strangers laughing. It was the people closest to me. Friends who once kicked the ball beside me now used their voices as weapons. "Look at him," they snickered. He thinks he's going to be somebody. He thinks football will save him. Their laughter echoed louder than any stadium cheer, but there was no glory in it, only doubt carved into my bones. Mockery has a way of finding you at your weakest. When I missed a shot, they clapped sarcastically. When I tripped, they howled as if my fall confirmed every cruel prediction. It wasn't just the kids either. Adults shook their heads when I passed. "Foolish boy," they muttered. "Dreams don't feed families. He'll learn soon enough." Each word was a stone thrown at the fragile castle I was building inside my heart. But the worst came from those who claimed to know football. Local coaches, men who had once worn uniforms and thought themselves guardians of the game, saw me and dismissed me before I even touched the ball. "Too small, too skinny, he'll break before he bends." Some didn't even speak. They just smirked, arms crossed, as if my effort was comedy. Their doubt hung over me like storm clouds, heavy and unshakable. Still, I kept showing up. I couldn't let their voices decide my fate. Yet every laugh, every sneer pushed deeper into my chest. At night, I replayed their words as I lay on the floor of our home. "He'll never make it. He'll end up like the rest." The silence of the room turned their mockery into a chorus. For a moment, it was easier to believe them. One evening, I tried to play with older boys in a nearby field. They looked at me, grinned, and one said, "What's this twig doing here? Careful, you'll snap in half." They shoved me away, their laughter following as I walked off, ball clutched tight in my hands. My throat ached, but I refused to let them see tears. Pride was the only armor I had. Even in my own family, doubt was a shadow I couldn't escape. My mother wanted safety for me, not risk. My father, broken by his own unfinished dream, begged me not to get lost in mine. I felt caught between love and disbelief, torn by the very people whose approval I craved. But mockery can also be a strange teacher. Each insult hardened me. Each doubt became a blade I sharpened into motivation. When they laughed, I trained longer. When they sneered, I played harder. When they dismissed me, I carved those words into memory, not as wounds, but as fuel. Yet the cracks still showed. There were nights I sat on empty fields, ball resting on my lap, staring into nothing. What if they're right? I whispered to the dark. What if I'm chasing a lie? The silence gave no answer, only the sound of my own breathing and the faint echo of laughter that refused to leave my ears. Still, deep down, something stronger whispered back. They don't know you. They don't see what you feel. Prove them wrong. That became my secret vow. If mockery was the fire, then I would walk through flames until the world had no choice but to see me burn brighter than their doubt. I began to train like obsession itself had taken hold of me. I practiced until my muscles screamed. I dribbled through stones and glass until my feet were raw. I invented moves no one had seen, born from necessity on broken streets. And when I finally faced those who mocked me, I carried not just my ball, but their voices. Every sneer, every doubt, every cruel laugh, I carried them all, ready to return them in silence on the field with a ball at my feet. Because the truth is this: mockery can break you, or it can make you unstoppable. And I had no intention of breaking. Every dream has a moment when the impossible cracks, just enough for light to break through. For me, that moment came when I was still just a skinny boy carrying a ball of rags and a heart too stubborn to quit. After years of laughter, rejection, and doubt, I finally stood on the edge of something new, my first real chance to prove myself. It started with a whisper. A man named Waldemar de Brito, a former player who had seen greatness up close, watched me play on a small field. I didn't know he was there at first. I was just being me, barefoot, relentless, chasing every ball as if the world would end if I stopped. When I finally noticed him, his eyes weren't filled with the usual mockery. They were sharp, curious, as if he saw something no one else had. Later, he pulled me aside. His words burned into me. "This boy will be the best in the world." I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. No one had ever spoken of me like that. Not my friends, not my family, not even my father. For the first time, someone believed. For the first time, the hunger inside me was seen. He told me about a team called Santos, a place where legends could be born. He said he would take me there, give me a chance. My heart raced so fast I thought it might break my ribs. Could it be true? Could I really belong in a place like that? The day I arrived at Santos, I felt like an intruder. The field was bigger than anything I'd ever known. The players faster, stronger, sharper. I stood there in my patched shorts, clutching my old shoes, terrified that the laughter would come back louder than ever. But when the ball rolled to my feet, everything else disappeared. Instinct took over. My legs moved as they always had, quick, unpredictable, filled with rhythm the streets had taught me. The defenders came at me hard, but I slipped past them like water around stones. I dribbled, spun, and struck. When the ball hit the net, I heard silence. Not laughter, not mockery. Silence so heavy it felt like the world was holding its breath. Then came the cheers. Real cheers. For me. That goal was more than a score. It was proof. Proof that I wasn't just a poor boy chasing illusions. Proof that the hunger, the pain, the endless nights of doubt had created something real. Coaches looked at me differently that day. Teammates nodded in respect. For once, I wasn't invisible. But the breakthrough wasn't only on the field. At home, my father's eyes filled with tears when he heard the news. For a man whose dream had been crushed, seeing mine ignite was like healing a wound he thought would never close. My mother still worried, still feared poverty's grip, but even she couldn't ignore the spark in my eyes. I was no longer just dreaming. I was beginning to live it. Yet with the breakthrough came new pressure. Expectations I had never known before. Suddenly it wasn't enough to play well. I had to shine every time. Every mistake felt heavier, every failure sharper. But I welcomed it. Because pressure was better than invisibility. Pressure meant the world had finally turned its eyes toward me. I knew then that the journey was only beginning. That one goal, that one chance was just the start of something far greater than I could yet imagine. The road ahead would be brutal, filled with battles I wasn't ready for, but I also knew this. Once the door cracks open, you can't let it close again. That first breakthrough was my proof of life, the signal that I had clawed my way out of the dust and into the light. And even if the world still doubted me, I would never doubt myself again. Glory is never free. It demands something in return. Blood, sweat, or pieces of your soul. I learned that truth the hard way. When the game I loved with every fiber of my being decided to test me with pain I didn't think I could survive. It was supposed to be just another match, another chance to prove myself. The crowd was small, the stakes even smaller, but to me it was everything. I was running, dribbling, flying past defenders when it happened. A sharp, tearing pain exploded in my leg. I collapsed to the ground, clutching my thigh, the world spinning around me. The silence that followed was worse than the pain. Coaches muttered, fans shook their heads. "He's too fragile," I heard someone whisper. "Told you he wouldn't last." They carried me off the field, and as I sat on the bench, tears burned my eyes. Not because of the injury, but because of the fear. What if they were right? What if I was too small, too weak, too poor to survive this game? My dream felt like it was slipping through my fingers, dissolving in the dust. The days that followed were torture. My body ached, but my mind screamed louder. Lying on my bed, I stared at the ceiling, replaying every cruel word I had ever heard. Too skinny, too weak. Go home. They weren't just insults anymore. They were prophecies threatening to come true. For the first time, I thought about quitting, about walking away before the dream destroyed me completely. But then I remembered the hunger, the fire that had carried me from the alleys to Santos, the promise I made under the stars, clutching my ragged ball. And I realized something. Pain was not the end. Pain was proof I had given everything. Pain meant I was still in the fight. So I forced myself to rise. I trained harder than before, even when my body screamed to stop. I strengthened my legs until they could no longer betray me. I built muscles where there had been none, sharpened skills until they cut through doubt like knives. The same streets that had scarred me became my allies again. I ran through alleys, jumped over stones, dribbled through glass. Every wound turned into a lesson. Every scar became armor. Pain, I discovered, could be fuel. The same thing that nearly broke me lit a fire no one could extinguish. When I finally returned to the field, I wasn't the same boy who had fallen. I was harder, sharper, more dangerous. Opponents who once laughed at me now hesitated. They could see it in my eyes. This boy had walked through fire and survived. But the world wasn't finished testing me. Injuries returned, small ones at first, then heavier blows. Each time the whispers came back. He won't last. He's finished. Each time I proved them wrong. I refused to stay down. I refused to let pain write my story. I began to realize that the game was teaching me something deeper. It wasn't just about goals or victories. It was about endurance, about learning to rise every time life pushed me into the dirt. Football was my teacher, and pain was its lesson, and I was determined to learn it better than anyone else. There were nights when I limped home, body aching, but a smile on my face. Because I knew something the world didn't. Pain was making me stronger. It was carving me into someone who could withstand storms, someone who could not be broken by doubt, rejection, or even injury. One day, as I scored again in front of a small crowd, I caught the eyes of those who once mocked me. They didn't laugh this time. They watched in silence, maybe even fear. And I thought to myself, this is what pain has given me, the power to turn their doubt into silence. There are stages in life that seem too big for a poor boy to stand on. Stages where the lights blind, the crowd roars, and every doubt you've ever carried threatens to crush you. My stage came in 1958 when I was only 17, standing in a country far from home wearing the jersey of Brazil in the World Cup. I was still a boy in many ways, skinny, shy, carrying scars from hunger and laughter that once tried to bury me. But now the world was watching. When I pulled that yellow shirt over my chest, it felt like I was carrying the weight of millions. My knees shook as I walked onto the field in Sweden, and I could feel the eyes of teammates, opponents, and strangers burning into me. Some thought I was too young. Others thought I was too fragile. Almost no one thought I was ready. The first whistle blew, and the game exploded into chaos. The Swedes were bigger, stronger, and more confident. For a moment, I felt like that barefoot boy again, too small for the fight. Doubt crept into my mind. What am I doing here? But then the ball came to my feet and everything else vanished. Instinct took over. The same instincts sharpened on broken streets, forged in hunger and pain. I dribbled, twisted, moved past defenders who underestimated me. And then it happened. My first goal in the tournament. The ball struck my foot like destiny itself, guiding it. It soared, kissed the net, and the stadium froze. For a second, I thought I was dreaming. Then the roar hit me. Teammates lifted me, the crowd erupted, and suddenly I wasn't just a poor boy anymore. I was Brazil's hope. But the true test came in the final. Brazil against Sweden, their stadium, their crowd, their anthem echoing. I stood in the tunnel, heart pounding louder than the drums outside. I could hear whispers even then. Too young, too small, too soon. But when the match began, I answered with my feet. 2 goals, 2 strikes of defiance. Each one silenced another voice that had doubted me. When the final whistle blew and Brazil were champions, I collapsed onto the grass, tears streaming down my face. 17 years old, once mocked for chasing a ragged ball, now standing as a World Cup champion. My teammates hugged me, the crowd roared, and I realized the stage that was supposed to crush me had become the place where I was reborn. That night, I couldn't sleep. The sound of the crowd still thundered in my ears. Reporters wrote my name in headlines across the globe. Strangers called me a miracle. But inside, I was still the same boy from the dust. Only now the world had seen me. The hunger, the pain, the scars. They had all prepared me for this moment. The stage didn't just change my career, it changed my life. It turned doubt into belief, mockery into respect, invisibility into fame. And it taught me a truth I will never forget. The bigger the stage, the more powerful the silence of those who said you'd never make it. Still, I knew this was only the beginning. One tournament doesn't make a king. One victory doesn't erase the laughter of the past. I would have to prove myself again and again, under brighter lights, heavier pressure, harsher critics. And I was ready. Because once you've conquered the stage that was meant to destroy you, no stage can ever scare you again. Fame doesn't arrive like a shout. It begins as a whisper. After the World Cup in Sweden, my name traveled faster than I could have imagined. It started with headlines in languages I couldn't read, photographs in newspapers I had never touched. Pelé, they wrote, a name born on the dusty streets of Brazil, now carried by voices across oceans. I was only 17, but suddenly the world knew me. I walked through airports and felt eyes following me. People pointed, smiled, asked for autographs I barely knew how to sign. It was strange. Only months before, I was invisible, mocked, told I'd never make it. Now strangers leaned over barriers, stretching their hands toward me as if touching me would give them a piece of what I had done. The shift was dizzying, but whispers of fame are different from the reality of it. At first it felt like magic. Coaches, journalists, and even kings wanted to meet me. The boy who once chased a ball of rags barefoot now sat at tables with politicians, businessmen, and celebrities. My face appeared on posters, my name on radios, my goals replayed on screens in cities I had never visited. Yet there was a loneliness to it all. On the streets of Bauru, I had been just another boy. In Santos, I had teammates who laughed, shouted, and trained beside me as equals. But abroad, I felt like an exhibit, a symbol more than a person. They didn't know the hunger that had forged me, the scars that covered my feet. To them, I was a miracle, a prodigy. To me, I was still the boy who played until the sun sank, who heard his stomach growl louder than the cheers. The pressure grew heavier with every whisper that became a roar. People no longer expected me to play well. They demanded it. A poor game wasn't just a mistake. It was betrayal. I carried not only my own dream, but the hope of an entire country, the pride of Brazil on my shoulders. Every time I stepped onto a field, I could feel the weight of millions pressing down on me. Still, there were moments of joy, scoring goals for Santos, lifting trophies, hearing my name chanted by thousands. It reminded me why I had started. The game was still the same at its core, a ball, a field, and my determination. But everything around it had changed. I couldn't walk down a street without being recognized. I couldn't play without being swarmed. Fame had made me visible, but it had also stolen the quiet. Sometimes at night in hotel rooms far from home, I stared at the ceiling and asked myself, is this what I wanted? I had dreamed of stadiums, of cheers, of respect, but I hadn't dreamed of being trapped by my own name. Fame is a crown, yes, but it is also chains. Still, I couldn't deny the power of it. My name was no longer just mine. It belonged to Brazil, to the fans, to the world. And I understood something deeper. Fame wasn't about me. It was about what I represented. A boy from the dust, a story of hunger turned into glory. I had become a symbol of possibility, proof that even the poor could rise, that even the mocked could be celebrated. But whispers of fame can turn into whispers of doubt just as quickly. Rivals studied me, fans demanded more, and critics waited for me to fail. Every goal was expected, every miss was magnified. The higher I rose, the sharper the knives became. And deep inside I wondered, could I keep carrying this weight? Could the boy who once played for survival survive the world's spotlight? The world had seen me score. They had seen me lift trophies. They had watched my name race across newspapers and radios. But admiration is not the same as belief. Even after Sweden, even after Santos, even after goal, the whispers never died. Whispers that cut deeper than the laughter of my childhood. Whispers that asked, can a boy from Brazil really be the best in the world? To many, Brazil was a mystery, an exotic land painted with colors of carnival, beaches, and poverty. To them, football belonged to Europe, to the nations with history, with wealth, with power. They saw me as a spark, maybe even a miracle, but not something that could last. a poor boy barefoot in the alleys. That was a story for sympathy, not a foundation for greatness. They didn't want to believe that dust could turn into gold. When I traveled abroad, I felt it in every stare. Reporters smiled for photographs, but their questions were sharp knives wrapped in paper. Are you strong enough to face European defenders? Can South American football really match our standards? Aren't you too young to carry so much? They weren't looking for answers. They were daring me to collapse under the weight. On the field, disbelief had its own language. Tackles came harder, fouls more violent, boots crashed into my legs with malice. Opponents weren't just trying to stop me, they wanted to break me. I could hear them breathe it in my ear. Go home, boy, you don't belong here. Every bruise, every cut on my shins, every time I limped off the pitch, I carried not just pain but the reminder that the world was testing me. Yet the more they tried to break me, the sharper I became. I learned to anticipate kicks before they landed, to move quicker, to turn their rage into openings. I made the ball my shield, my sword, my answer. When they mocked me with words, I answered with goals. When they doubted my strength, I answered by standing taller even when my legs shook. But disbelief is not always loud. Sometimes it hides in silence. I could see it in the eyes of referees who let fouls go unpunished, as if protecting me wasn't worth the effort. I felt it in the hesitation of sponsors who hesitated to invest, unsure if my rise would last. Even some of my teammates looked at me with doubt. I was young, after all, still a boy among men, and every success of mine reminded them of what they hadn't achieved. Their jealousy became just another form of disbelief. At night, alone in hotel rooms far from Brazil, I thought about it all. I thought about the boy who juggled a ragged ball while neighbors laughed. I realized the world was no different from those neighbors. They saw my hunger, but they didn't understand it. They saw my goals, but they didn't believe the fire behind them. They wanted me to fade so their world would stay intact. But what they wanted didn't matter. I reminded myself of the promise I had made under the stars years before, that I would not stop, not break, not bend, until the world bowed to the name they tried to bury. Every insult became fuel. Every cheap tackle became proof. Every bruise became a scar that told me I was still alive, still fighting. And slowly, disbelief began to turn. Not into full belief, not yet, but into fear. I could hear it in the silence of stadiums after my goals, in the faces of defenders who hesitated for just a second when I touched the ball. They didn't want to admit it, but they were beginning to see. Still, I knew the battle wasn't over. Belief is not given easily, and the world wasn't ready to hand me its crown. They wanted to test me again and again, to watch if I would break under the spotlight. They wanted me to be a fleeting story, not a legend. But legends aren't born from belief. They are born from disbelief, forged in the fire of rejection and doubt. And I was ready to keep burning until nothing could extinguish me. There are moments in life when everything slows down, when the noise of the crowd fades, the weight of the world disappears, and all that's left is the ball at your feet and destiny waiting. For me, that moment came in 1970, under the blazing sun of Mexico, in the World Cup that would crown not just Brazil but me forever. I had known glory before. I had lifted trophies. I had heard my name shouted in stadiums across continents. But this was different. This was the world watching, the weight of history pressing down, the expectation that nothing less than perfection would be enough. Brazil had already won twice before, but now we sought something greater, a third crown, an unshakable legacy. And I, the poor boy once mocked in the streets, was at the center of it. The stadium in Mexico City pulsed with energy. The heat was suffocating, the crowd deafening, but my mind was sharp. As the match began, Italy pressed hard, desperate to break us. Their defenders marked me tightly, their tackles ruthless. I could hear their voices, half in Italian, half in anger. Not today, Pele. You won't beat us today. But destiny doesn't listen to defenders. In the 18th minute, the ball came soaring toward me, high in the air. Time seemed to pause. I leapt, rising higher than anyone thought possible, my body hanging against the sky. My forehead met the ball with perfect precision, and it thundered into the net. The stadium erupted. Teammates swarmed me. The Brazilian fans screamed my name, and I felt something bigger than a goal. It was a crown settling on my head. But it didn't stop there. That final was not just a victory, it was art. Every pass, every play carried the rhythm of Brazil, the music of our streets, the proof that beauty could win as much as power. We scored again, and again, and again, until Italy bowed under the brilliance of a team that played like gods. When the final whistle blew, the score was 4-1. Brazil, champions of the world. Brazil, crowned forever. I dropped to my knees on the grass, tears streaming down my face. Around me, confetti rained like gold. My teammates lifted me high, and I looked up to the sky. In that moment, I saw everything at once. The dusty streets, the ragged ball, the laughter of neighbors, the hunger, the pain. All of it had led here. All of it had been worth it. As I held the Jules Rimet trophy in my hands, I felt its weight, heavy and cold, but also alive. It wasn't just metal. It was the story of a boy who was never supposed to make it. A boy who turned doubt into fuel, who turned hunger into fire, who turned mockery into music. It wasn't just Brazil that was crowned. It was me, the boy from nothing, now standing as the king of the game. But even in that moment of triumph, I felt the shadow of what came with it. Crowns are heavy, glory demands a price. Fame had already taken my quiet, my peace. And now, with the world bowing, the burden would only grow. I wasn't just Pelé anymore, I was a symbol, a legend, a man expected to never fail. Still, as the crowd roared, as my teammates embraced me, I knew one truth. No matter what came after, they could never take this away. The crown of the game was mine, and it was forged not in privilege or comfort, but in dust, blood, and fire. After Mexico, after the third crown, after the whole world bowed, I began to understand something I had never felt before. My life no longer belonged to me. I was no longer just Pelé, the player. I had become Pelé, the symbol. And symbols, I would learn, are heavier than crowns. Everywhere I went, the weight followed me. Airports turned into stadiums of their own. Crowds pressed against glass just to catch a glimpse of me walking through. Children ran barefoot, holding scraps of paper, begging for autographs. Adults stretched their hands toward me as if touching me would give them a piece of the dream. Flashbulbs exploded, reporters shouted questions, and strangers called my name in languages I couldn't even understand. At first it felt like glory. The poor boy from Bauru, once invisible, now carried on shoulders, sung about in chants, painted on murals. Songs were written about me, statues raised, and my face appeared on posters from Rio to Rome. My name was no longer whispered, it was shouted across continents. But with every cheer came expectation. Every time I stepped onto a field, it wasn't just Pelé playing anymore. It was Brazil. It was every poor child who dreamed of breaking free. It was every person who had ever been told no. And that weight was suffocating. On days when my legs were heavy, when my body ached from too many games, I could hear the doubts. Has the king faded? Is this the end? One missed pass, one bad match, and headlines questioned whether the symbol had cracked. One injury, and whispers rushed to declare me finished. Glory was never enough. The crown demanded proof again and again. I realized then that fame is not a gift. It is a test of endurance, not just of the body, but of the soul. Because while the world clapped for the legend, inside I was still the boy who missed the silence of Bauru. I missed the alleyways where no one cared if I stumbled, where my only audience was the setting sun. I longed for days when the ball was freedom, not responsibility. But those days were gone. The boy had vanished. The symbol had replaced him, and being a symbol meant sacrifice. My privacy disappeared. I couldn't walk down a street without being followed. I couldn't share a quiet meal without cameras flashing through the window. Even moments with my family became public property. My life belonged not to me, but to the millions who believed in me. Yet, amid the exhaustion, there were moments that reminded me why it mattered. Children sprinting barefoot through dusty alleys yelling my name as they kicked a ball made of rags. Fathers pointing at me with pride, telling their sons, "If he can make it, so can you." Mothers smiling with tears in their eyes, whispering, "He is proof that even the poor can dream." Those moments were priceless. In their eyes I saw myself again, the hungry boy, the dreamer, the fighter. And in their voices, I heard a truth. I was no longer playing just for me. I was playing for them, for every child who thought greatness was out of reach, for every family crushed by poverty who needed proof that destiny could still be rewritten. But symbols are fragile too. When the world lifts you high, it also waits for you to fall. Every cheer carried the shadow of doubt. Every statue carried the risk of cracks. The higher I climbed, the more I realized that being a symbol wasn't about what I had achieved, but about what I still had to prove, again and again until my body gave out. At times, the silence in hotel rooms felt unbearable. Alone, staring at ceilings in cities far from home, I wondered, am I still Pelé? Or am I just the idea of him? The cameras never stopped, the questions never ended, and the demands only grew. And in that silence, I discovered the cost of being more than a man. I never set out to be king. All I wanted was a ball at my feet and a chance to escape the hunger that stalked me in the alleys of Bauru. But life has a way of turning the smallest flames into wildfires, and mine spread until the world could no longer ignore it. They called me Pele. They called me Ore, the king. But every time I heard it, I remembered the boy with torn shorts, bare feet, and a ball of rags. The truth is, I wasn't supposed to be here. According to the whispers, according to the laughter, according to the doubt, I was destined to fade into the dust. Too poor, too skinny, too weak, too Brazilian. They said the world would never bow to someone like me. And yet here I stood, crowned not by privilege but by struggle. Being called king felt strange. A king is supposed to live in palaces, to wear jewels, to command armies. But my throne was a patch of grass, my crown was sweat, and my kingdom was every child who dreamed with a ball at their feet. I was their proof, their answer, their symbol. And yet, being king came with shadows. Fame had stolen pieces of me I would never get back. My freedom, my silence, my privacy, they were gone. People saw the legend, not the man. They celebrated Pelé but forgot Edson, the boy inside who still longed for quiet nights and the laughter of friends on dusty streets. Sometimes I asked myself, was the crown worth it? But then I would see the faces. The poor child in Africa, who kicked a ball of paper and screamed my name. The young boy in Europe who dreamed not of being rich, but of being relentless. The fathers, the mothers, the voices that said, if he could do it, maybe so can we. And I knew the answer. Yes, the crown was worth it, not for me, but for them. The king they never expected had become more than a player. I was a reminder that greatness can come from anywhere, that poverty cannot silence talent, that hunger can forge strength. My story wasn't just mine, it belonged to the world. But kings do not reign forever. One day, the boots grow heavy. One day, the cheers fade. One day, the crown must be set down. I knew that time would come for me too. And when it did, I wanted people to remember not the goals, not the trophies, not the headlines, but the truth. That I was once a boy no one believed in, who refused to stop, who turned every doubt into destiny. Because in the end, I was never crowned by gold or confetti. I was crowned by struggle, by rejection, by persistence, by the fire that said, I will not break. That is what made me king, not the world's approval, but the refusal to give up when the world had already written me off. And so, if you remember me, remember this. Greatness does not belong to the chosen few. It belongs to those who choose to fight, those who rise when mocked, who run when hungry, who keep playing when everyone else walks away. I was the king they never expected, and I will always be the boy who never stopped believing. And that is the story of a poor boy from Brazil, who the world never believed in, until it had no choice but to bow. If this story moved you, don't let it end here. Subscribe to Beyond the Game for more journeys of pain, resilience, and glory. Hit the like button if you believe no dream is too big, and share this video with someone who needs to be reminded never to give up. And in the comments, tell us, where are you watching from? Drop your city and country, because this story is no longer mine. It belongs to the world.